originally abandoned Conestoga wagon because she had wanted to scavenge whatever remained inside, but someone had already looted the wagon. All she had discovered was Hetty, dehydrated, weak from loss of blood, and with a wound that had become infected from the arrow deeply embedded in her shoulder. If not for Mrs. Templeton's avarice, Hetty would be dead. Although honestly it was Mr. Lynn's doctoring that had kept her alive. He'd used mysterious medicines from the Orient to bring Hetty back to life over the past 7 weeks as they'd traveled north. Mrs. Templeton claimed to be a nurse, but she didn't seem to know much about caring for anyone. Hetty shot a quick look at the young Chinaman, who was sitting quietly beside the fire, smoking a long, curved white clay pipe. "If it had been up to you, Lucy," a young female voice accused, "you would have left Hetty in that wagon to die." Hetty hadn't seen Grace approaching from the opposite side of the campfire, but she'd seen the girl defend her brother from their mother's slaps often enough to know that where Griffin was, Grace was never far behind. "I'll take care of this, Grace," Hetty said, knowing that Mrs. Templeton was still angry enough to lash out at her daughter. Her warning came too late. Mrs. Templeton reached out her arm like a lizard's tongue, grabbed a handful of Grace's tumbled red curls, and yanked hard. "You're the one to blame for this. I never should have brought the two of you along." Grace shot a fearful look in Hetty's direction. Hetty couldn't imagine having a mother who wished she'd left her children behind. A mother who felt free to slap faces and yank hair. A mother who considered her children a nuisance. No wonder Grace looked so scared. Hetty's heart went out to the girl. Hetty's own wonderful, loving parents had been lost 3 years ago in the Great Chicago Fire, when Mrs. O'Leary's cow had kicked over a lantern and burned down most of the city, including the Wentworth family mansion and her father's bank. Overnight, Hetty had gone from being the pampered daughter of wealthy parents to being an orphan stuck in the Chicago Institute for Orphaned Children. Her uncle, Stephen Wentworth, had left Hetty and her 3 sisters and 2 brothers at the orphanage, even after they'd begged him to rescue them from the cruelty of the headmistress, Miss Iris Birch. Miss Birch, like Mrs. Templeton, seemed to find joy in brutality against those weaker than herself. Every infraction at the Institute had been punished with 3, "You're lucky it's only 3, Miss Birch was fond of saying, vicious strokes of a birch rod. Hetty forced her thoughts away from her 5 siblings, who were all lost, or dead, but certainly gone. She couldn't do anything to help them, but she could help Grace. "What I said about Griffin goes for Grace, too," Hetty said. "Let her go." Mrs. Templeton twisted Grace's hair until the girl whimpered and stood on tiptoes to avoid the pain. "This is my kid. I'll do with her as I like." "Not while I'm here, you won't." Hetty obeyed a sudden impulse, and her balled fist struck Mrs. Templeton in the nose. "Ow!" Mrs. Templeton released Grace and grabbed her bloodied nose. "You'll pay for that." Instead of running like Griffin had, Grace stood and watched with anxious eyes. "Please, Lucy," the girl pleaded. "I'm sorry. Griffin's sorry." "Shut up, you ungrateful whelp," Mrs. Templeton snarled. That was another strange thing about the Templeton family. Hetty couldn't imagine calling her own mother by her first name, yet both children called their mother Lucy. Nor could she imagine any mother calling her daughter an ungrateful whelp. Hetty should have known better than to think Mrs. Templeton wouldn't strike back. A moment later, she felt nails